to episode 8 of the Hockey Life podcast. Today we are honoured to be joined by Mr. Don Rowston. Now, if you don't know the name, Don is a hockey player, a businessman. He used to be our boss, but most of all, he's a great friend. So he has got a huge history within the hockey industry here in Australia. So if you purchased or played with Bauer products, chances are Don has had a hand in getting them here to Australia and then also into your local store. So let's get into it. Don, thank you for coming on the Hockey Life podcast.
Okay, good. Good to see you guys. And
So I think, Don, why don't you tell everyone and us about how did hockey start for you and what did it look like?
yeah, well, first of all, I lived in Glebe Point, which wasn't that far from the main ice rink in Sydney, which was the Sydney Glaciarium. And so it was, I think I was about 13. We had a friend of the family who lived with us in our house. We had a few lodgers and he was one of them. And he used to take up all these different sports and things, and they seemed to last for about 3 months and he'd take up something else. And one of the things he took up was skating. He started going skating at the Glaciarium in Sydney. And he was about 21 and I was about 13 at the time. Anyway, he said, "Oh, come along, I'll take you skating." It's down to the Glaciarium. We went and he took me skating. We, skate around for the session. That was on a Tuesday night. So I was quite happy to do that because I was an only child, and so it was sort of like a big brother. Anyway, we went round and sort of hired the skates and started learning to skate. Well, this happened regularly, and then he sort of got sick of going skating. He wasn't very good at it, by the way. And anyway, I thought, this is quite a nice activity. I'll continue. So I started going to skating when I had the time, although the family was involved in a number of businesses and I was caught up in that and had not that much spare time, only evenings and Saturday afternoon and Sunday. So I continued on skating, and after a little while, I thought after a reasonably short period, I thought, all these blokes are going too fast. I said, I'd like to go fast too, but I didn't have a pair of skates, so it was a bit hard on the rentals, and they never sharp and all that sort of thing. So I managed to get some money and pay £3. 5 shillings for a pair of skates. And I thought I was made. I had this pair of skates and they're absolutely wonderful, and I could get them sharpened. In those days, the Sydney Glaciarium was just a marvellous place. It was sort of like a palace almost. It had a good restaurant, it had a good milk bar, it had a snack, sort of like a confectionery shop. It had a private skate room where you could leave your skates. The rink was slightly smaller than a regular size hockey arena, but it was big enough to play 5-man hockey. And anyway, after a while I started going down to the hockey and watch a bit of the hockey, and I thought, this is really good stuff, I really like this. Anyway, so as it turned out, after a little while, I met a few mates, a few contemporaries down there, and skate and talk about it. And they said, we're going to join a hockey club. And I said, well, I wouldn't mind doing that myself, very keen. And by this time I could skate reasonably well. I could skate both directions, reasonably effective. I was about as... in about half the situation, fastest in the fast skating at the general sessions. But anyway, I went to the hockey thing, and I was going to join a club called Wests. At that time, there was four hockey clubs. It was East, West, Glebe Lions and St George. They were the four major hockey clubs, and they had a second grade, and also they had a few junior. There was another minor junior competition as well. So I went down there, and somehow by accident I finished up joining the Glebe. Glebe, it was Glebe then. It wasn't Lions. It was Glebe Comets. Anyway, of course, I was quite happy as it turned out because, there's quite a few people I knew and other people, and the officials seemed very good. And so it was sort of like entering a bit of a family. The competition with the practices were terrific. We had practices at the Glaciarium, and they started at 8 o'clock Sunday morning and finished at 11. So we had 3 hours practice, which was pretty
That's a long practice.
and that lasted for about 12 months because when I first started skating, there was also the Ice Palais, which was out at the showground, which was a full-size rink, and it was really, I only went there once, but it was really a beautiful rink. All these rinks had the orchestras too, like they had an orchestra playing, and they were pretty nice places.
Get the hype for the game, like a bit of music
Everything, yeah.
And Don, back then when you started playing with Glebe, what was the gear? So you had skates, how did you get the other pieces?
Well, that was the thing. Apparently there was a little bit of equipment made in Melbourne. That's where the gloves came from. I managed to buy a pair of gloves. But other than that, there was just sprinkling of stuff around the place, but you couldn't go anywhere and buy a lot of equipment because it was really there was nothing really available. So I just proceeded to sit down and make all mine from basically old cricket equipment that I had when I was playing cricket. So I had elbow guards with batting gloves sewn onto some felt, and shin guards that were just soccer shin guards with, more thick padding. And the shorts, well, I had an big old pair of short khaki shorts and put like padding on the inside so I wouldn't get hurt. But anyway, it was pretty ordinary. But talking about the sport, well, I was in the reserve grade and playing quite well, and then I became captain of the team after about a year, and we were playing and doing quite well, although in the general first grade competition, Lions I think we were second last out of the 4 teams. But an interesting thing, the Ice Palace closed, and that left the situation where all the clubs had to operate out of just the one ice rink that's suitable for hockey was the Glaciarium. It was a great place, but made it very tight for practice. So instead of having 3-hour practices, we were down to hour practices. So that made quite a difference to the time you had on the ice to improve your skills. Yeah. And we had, anyway, after we all started then there was a big change happen. Through the teams, there was a sprinkling of New Australians, as we used to call them then. And anyway, our team was formed by Dick Mann, who was, I think everyone that's been in hockey knows Dick Mann, who was a very famous gentleman in the game. And he started what they call the Bombers, and the Bombers still exist today, as do some of the other clubs. But he started the Bombers. Now the Bombers, there was more or less a selection of people that have come to Australia since World War II. And in that, there was about 4 of them that were Czechs, I think, and they were extremely good hockey players. Like, they were good. And although they were in their 30s, well into their 30s, mid to late 30s, even then, they were very, very good. Anyway, it soon happened that they were, when they first, everyone was laughing at because they couldn't skate very well, but you couldn't get the puck off them. And so although our team could skate well and pass reasonably well and shoot okay, they couldn't get the puck off the Bombers. So when you played the Bombers, and as far as I recall, for the next 3 years that the Bombers existed, I think they hardly lost a game.
Really? They were that dominant.
And they were just incredible, and they had these 4 or 5 really top-class players. Apart from the generally, they were a very, very strong team. It was all to do with passing. They just passed the puck everywhere, and very quick, sharp passes, and very effective shots. It's interesting to note at that period too, the sticks were straight.
Yeah.
The sticks were straight, and there was no curve in the stick. So it was a flick shot you had. There was no slap shots. It was sort of like a snapshot, but not a...
Did the sticks flex at all, or were they just kind of stiff, very stiff? And
the sticks were... they didn't have any fiberglass on them, so they were pretty fragile.
Okay.
And the problem was that the stick had a number on it, like a 4, 5, 6... and generally speaking, most people would have a 5 and a 6. What that designated was the angle of the stick, like how tall you were. If you were really tall, you need a 7.
Like the lie of the stick.
If you're a type 6, if you're a bit shorter, you'd take a 5 or a 4.
Right.
Yeah.
But it there was no curve on the stick at the bottom either. So it was flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had to have that, otherwise you would have wear your heel out all the time. So you're trying to stop them from wearing the heel out by putting something on it. But there was no polyurethanes or anything around in those days. It was clear lacquer and stuff like that. But these sticks, there was no slap shots as you know it today. And so therefore you had to flick the thing, and you didn't have a curve on it to give it a lot of power, So it was quite a skill to come up against. So the teams played. It was extremely competitive. The team that I was in, we had some pretty good players, and mostly Australian blokes. I don't think we had a foreigner at that stage, and that went on pretty well. And I always remember one night we went out, and this was when I was in the first grade team. And then I think I was about 17 when I got in the first grade team. And I was very proud of myself for getting in this first grade team because, it wasn't that easy to get in. And anyway, so we did actually drew with the Bombers. So we did have something.
Right.
But we had various coaches, and we didn't seem to make much progress. But then a bloke called Kennedy, who was a very famous person in Sydney, he sold skates down in Kent Street. If you want a pair of, he made the skates. His father was a bootmaker that made skates, and he retired, and Ken used to make the skates as boots as well, and buy the blades to put on them and so on. But Ken was an ex-Olympian from the 36 Winter Olympics for speed skating, and he also lived in England for quite a while, and he was in the British Army also while he was there. So he was an older bloke, but he played good hockey, and he was recognised as one of the best hockey players of his period. Anyway, that was all right. All going along fine. We're getting better. I'm starting to skate well. and started to, have an impression, scoring a few goals. And I was playing on the left wing, I was forward. And I had a bit of eyesight trouble, but I wore glasses, but I didn't wear them playing, so I had a bit of trouble with that. But I did try to get some contact lenses, which I got them, but they were very primitive at that particular stage, so I had a bit of difficulty. But I used to wear them, but they used to have bubbles in them, so it was a bit awkward. So everything was going along fine, and then suddenly in 1955, they said, well, the Glaciarium is closing.
Oh, wow.
Here we are. The ring was originally opened in 1909.
Yep.
And so there was that virtually left Sydney without an ice rink. There was no ice rink in Sydney as far as I knew. And so that was the end of my hockey career, when I'm starting to show a lot of promise, And at that time, there's been a lot of good matches. The Victorian, they had Goodall Cup, who fought very strongly with Victoria. Victoria were extremely strong in hockey at that time. And also there was the Canadian Navy used to come, and they had about 4 or 5 ships, I think, and over the ships they have a pickup team, and it was Canada versus Australia. They were interesting matches as well. So there was a lot of good hockey around, and particularly with the Bombers, who everyone's trying to work out how to beat the Bombers. And,
Were they curving their stick, Don? Was that the key? Were they heating it up and curving it?
in sticks,
No.
still, no, just dead straight sticks. So the slap shot didn't exist.
Yep.
Just a snapshot, but if you snap too hard, you'd break your stick.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
You're trying to preserve your stick.
Yeah.
So it was more accurate flick shots.
Strengths as a player when you were growing up, looking back?
Well, I think when Kennedy came along and started coaching us, he had a philosophy about discipline, right? And his idea was, in a game, you are allocated, you have a job to do. Now, each member of that team or that line had a job to do with the defence and the forwards, etc., and also the goalkeeper. So the idea was to do your job as best possibly you could, and take instructions to what the coach wanted you to do, or the type of play you wanted to play. So instead of sort of everyone running around, trying to be great, trying to, do things they couldn't do, the idea was you had a job to do, you do that job. You don't start trying to do the other people's job as well. So if everyone does their job, the thing should come together.
Right.
But that takes a long time to get that to work.
Yeah.
But it gets results ultimately. Anyway, as I said, the rink had closed, so therefore no more ice hockey, so my sport had finished. So here I am, 18 years of age, so that's it. So a few of the blokes in the team, one of them, Graham Ferris, who was a pretty good friend, he was a member of Tamarama Surf Club, so I went and joined Tamarama Surf Club. So I took up the surf ski in the races, at the surf carnivals.
Yep.
I took that up, and I was doing that for about 4 years, and so training on the surf ski. So that was pretty well the end. In that period, there was a few smaller rinks, which were, I think there was $5. We used to call them postage stamps because they were about, smaller than the Blue Line Inn, about.
Really?
Yeah, about that size. But you couldn't really play hockey on them, although you might go and have a practice there or something. But they appeared later on, sort of like in 57, 58, those years. And there was also one that did last quite well, was Homebush. It was fractionally bigger, but they were all picture theatres. And the lower downstairs. So,
Oh, wow.
you know, so they were pretty small. They were all right for practice, shooting practice and passing practice and things like that, but they weren't that efficient, you know. Anyway, so that's you know, we carried on as far as skating was concerned. And unusually, there was a rink opened at Manly at the right near the just the back on the corner there, near the Manly Surf Life Saving Club, just at the back on the back street on that corner. Obviously, a very wealthy, very prized block of land, but it didn't last long. It only lasted a few years. It was another small one, you know. So he couldn't really play hockey on that at all. So hockey was dead until 1960, early 1960. And it was big rejoicing because the Sydney Council had decided to put in a rink at Prince Alfred Park.
Yeah.
Okay, the rink at Prince Alfred Park was, you could say it was makeshift at the best of times. You know, the boards were about just hip height, just up to the top of your thigh. They had, they didn't have boards on the outside. They had tin. But and there was a lot of, and they had sort of welded framework behind it. Wow. So it was only sort of hip height. So when you'd skate along, someone had hit you hard enough, you'd go straight over the boards. You know? And it was just an incredibly difficult situation. The rink itself was a full-size rink, but the bloke that when they designed it, they didn't have any curves on the corners.
So it was square.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That is deadly.
The association quickly had to turn around and get these sort of curves made on the corner, so when you shot the puck, it actually went around, it didn't stop in the corner.
That's incredible.
You know, so that was important.
And so, Don, could I ask, after the Glaciarium shut and in that period, I guess, did the sport lose a lot of people, like they didn't come back to play when...
Yeah, that was one of the problems with it, because there was a lot of senior players around at that time, and a lot of them didn't come back, you know. You know, and that was very sad because we lost a lot of people that could have taught coaches, potential coaches and so on like that, that could have helped the new clubs and so on that were formed.
Right.
But when it started up, the club started again. There was East, West, Bombers and Glebe, which was Glebe Lions. We changed to Lions back in the Glaciarium too. So, and then there was the another club that started a little later, was Hotspurs. They were a group that came from the Homebush area rink there. So this was the first grade competition, and it wasn't too bad because there was a lot of imports around, a lot of people that were hockey players, you know, that overseas, and they started turning up, you know, particularly Canadians. Yeah, the Canadians started there wasn't many at the Glaciarium, but I think you started getting all these Canadian tourists, you know, so you get a bloke that come out and he'd say to you, playing hockey here, you know.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
The same reaction we get now.
So he'd send home and get his gear back, get his gear out because the gear wasn't much good. Anyway, so and then so they'd turn up and they, you know, because they got terrific accents and, you know, and most of them were pretty good hockey players, or you get the exceptions too. There were some really good ones. But the ice rink at PA was extremely difficult because it started at 8 o'clock and it was, just not real ice. And they had a Zamboni, but they didn't know how to work it properly. And by the time you got the first grade games used to start at 9 o'clock, but it started to get a little moist on the top. And by the time you finished 11 o'clock, the two matches, hour matches, there was about an inch of water.
Wow.
Like an inch of water like that. So the puck, when you'd pass the puck, it'd often stop.
It'd just die.
So I developed a technique of sort of flicking it along, sort of jump along.
Like kind of skim.
From the left wing to the right wing.
Yeah.
Trying to do.
Over the puddles.
Yeah.
But, they were extremely difficult to play because, like the conditions were appalling. And the people that had the lease was Maloney from Melbourne, and they had a manager there that wouldn't do anything. It was pathetic. It was really bad. Wouldn't do the ice when you wanted it. You wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that. No. It was all no. So in that period, I've got movies of that period, but it might say, these hockey players were terrible, but you've got to understand the conditions were absolutely appalling.
Yeah.
If you go over the boards, the rink was built up. You drop down. You were getting hurt all the time. People were getting hurt. There was no helmets, and there was the equipment wasn't that good. People around the place, Anyway, I sort of got this idea. There were so many people carted off to hospital. You couldn't it was just continual. Somebody getting hurt, particularly goalkeepers, because you go up to the goalkeeper when it was wet, flick the water into his face, and then shoot the puck.
That's a new thing. Okay, we're getting the new moves now this season.
Yeah, but honestly, they didn't have face guards, and they'd put their stick at the thing and come up and bang, hit them in the face. Just facial injuries. And so, this was happening. And anyway, Dick Mann was always a prominent character because he's always carting his team around and criticising the system and all the rest of it. Anyway, he was part of it. Anyway, that was neither here nor there. But he somehow imported some hockey gear from Eastern Europe. And of course everyone bought a bit of it. But unfortunately it wasn't very, very good. It was a bit sort of antiquated.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got into the first 1961. They had an interstate that sent to Melbourne, and they were thrashed. And then our team, the Lions, were going well. We won the competition in 62 and in 63, first grade competition. And I was in the interstate team in 62. That's the Goodall Cup. And then I didn't get in the team the next year because they made me captain of the Brown Trophy team, which I've got some information about that as well.
Yeah.
So I was probably in the Goodall Cup about 4 or 5 times during the 60s, and I was in Brown Trophy teams forever, sort of thing, right through to the 70s. And so I played a fair bit of hockey around those times. But also at the, I'll just go back a little bit. Also there was, when the rink opened PA, there was also another rink opened at Bondi Junction.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was slightly smaller. You used to play 4-man hockey on it, but it was not a bad little rink. It was in Spring Street.
Okay.
And so that was involved in that. So when I first went to Melbourne on the Goodall Cup, we had a pretty good team. We had a couple of good imports. The rest were local. And St George was a big contributor to the team. They had Dewhurst and Miller and Manstead. They were prominent, and Bagnall. And anyway, I was playing with a bloke called Siedelmeier. He was a German bloke. He was a good player, a good friend of mine too. And had who was on the right wing? Oh, Renton, a bloke called Renton, Billy Renton, which was really he was a good player too. Anyway, we went to Melbourne. Melbourne had imported 3 Canadians from some in the Okanagan. I can't think of the name of the town. Anyway, they were absolutely top class, fantastic players. There were 3 of them, and they came out as a line. They were infinitely superior than anyone, and we lost the first game by a goal or 2 goals. I can't remember, but I did score in the first game, and then we played Melbourne without the Canadians, and we drew with them, and then they put them back in again, and we lost the last one. So, but it was very good ice hockey. We were reasonably good, but we had that gap in the development 5 years. It was just too much to games. But see, we were our team, the Lions, was a very solid, good team. We were coached well, so we did. It was pretty good ice hockey, and so we went along those sides. Now.
And so where did that gear start to? So were you still making your own kind of gear at that point?
No, I wasn't making anything.
Together? Yeah.
No,
So you get a bit of that.
I was in business. I had a chemical business, and it was quite. I was working hard, and that was bloody hard work because it was only me to do it. And it was hard. 44-gallon drums, lifting them up all the time was a hard job. I used to make about 30 products, I think, something like that. Anyway, so I thought to myself, I'll just make some inquiries. So I thought, I've got to get some decent equipment. I said, I'm getting hurt too much, going to the hospital all the time with cuts and stuff. Anyway, so I thought, I'll ring up the Canadian Embassy because I was an independent business person in a small factory. We had at Leichhardt in the back of the house. It was sort of like a triple garage size shed. We had all the stuff there, and we had a yard. And anyway, so I rang up the Canadian government, and the Canadian government. I said the lady was very polite and so on, and I said I'd want to talk to somebody in the Canadian government about getting some hockey equipment. And anyway, she said, oh, well, look, that's our commercial side of the government, and the guy to talk to was a bloke called Ed Price. Anyway, Ed Price, she said, unfortunately, he's not here. He's out at a show at the showground. It's like the Canadian government had a booth out there talking about Canadian products and so on. So she said, if you want to go out there, you probably can have a good, see him out there. So I had my son, Tim was about 4 at the time, and I was about 27, I think, 26, something like that. Anyway, I packed up Tim and took him out with me. We walked around and we found the booth, and I walked into the booth. I said, can I see a gentleman called Mr. Ed Price? And he said, oh, no, sorry, Ed's not here. I said, oh, okay. So I said, where is he? And he said, oh, he's just gone to lunch. And I said, oh, that's all right, I'll come back in an hour. That'll be good, they said, very polite. Anyway, I came back. Anyway, I came out and I went in and met Ed Price. And I said, Ed Price, my name's Don Rowston and I'm here. And he said, well, what can I do for you, Don? And I said, well, I'm interested in importing some hockey equipment. Oh, yeah, all right, hockey equipment. Oh, yeah, okay. I said, yeah, hockey equipment. He said, you mean field hockey equipment? I said, no, ice hockey equipment. What? What do you want to import that for? There's no... I said, ice hockey's played in Australia. What? Ice hockey is played in Australia? And I said, yes, it's been played for years. And he said, Don, I play hockey too. And I said, oh, good, that's good, Ed. And I said, that's fantastic. I said, can you help me? I certainly can.
That's awesome.
That's perfect.
Like he just was
Just taken aback by the thought of it.
Brother. But anyway, I said, well, look, I want the best one. What's your recommendation? He said, well, look, it's hands down Cooper. He said he's a fantastic equipment person, company. And he said, I know them well. And I said, oh, that's good. He said, look, I'll write you a letter, recommendation, and I'll give it to you and you can send it all off to him with your letter. So he did that for me, but he was like he was so helpful.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, oh, that's great, Don. That's really good. I must get down and watch the hockey sometime, And anyway, so off went the letter. And the letter, I got a reply from the letter in about 2 or 3 weeks later, because things were a lot slower in those days. It's all airmail and that sort of thing. But
of course, yeah.
it was from Jack Cooper, who was the president of the Cooper Weeks hockey equipment company in Toronto. And anyway, he said, oh, gee, Don, it's sort of personal, very straight away. He said, oh, Don, glad to hear you're playing hockey in Australia, and that's good. He said, about the equipment, he said, I'm terribly sorry we can't supply you because we don't deal with individuals. And I said, oh. I said, that's no good. He said, we only deal with companies. And I said, oh. I said, well, I've got a company. I said, it's not a sporting goods company, but it's a company. Oh, that's all right then, Don.
Yeah.
No trouble.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'll send you the catalogue and the price list. So he sends me the catalogue. He sends me the price list. And he spoke to me like I was his son.
Wow.
That is awesome.
And because he got this recommendation from the Canadian government, see?
Yeah.
And so then I got the catalogue. This is for the hockey gear. And of course, I got this catalogue and I'm beside myself, with this catalogue, this beautiful stuff, that actually protects your body.
Yeah. It's the real deal. This is what they use in...
It's great. Anyway, so I got this catalogue and I take it down and showed my mates and, oh, when are you going to get it, Rowston? And I said, oh, well, I've placed an order. All right. He said, all right, when's it coming? I said, well, it's got to come by ship, so it'll take a while, Yeah. And he says, all right. I said, when do you reckon it'll come? And I said, well, okay, this is what I've ordered. I ordered about 3 big boxes of stuff.
Everyone's bugging you now because
anyway,
you're the man.
Not at this stage.
Okay.
Anyway, the boat, it came on the boat. It was called the Tracan. I can remember it. Anyway, because I'd never imported anything and I didn't know much about it. Anyway, so I said, well, how do I get it off the ship? Oh, and somebody said to me, oh, you've got to go and get a customs agent. I said, what's a customs agent? I said, oh, look, here's, I found a customs agent, somebody on Mars who would, anyway, directed me to a place called Cridlands in the Sussex Street. Went down there and met the Cridland bloke, and he said, oh, we've got to find out if any of this stuff is on quota. Got to find out if it's, what it's made of, what it's this, what it's that, And I hadn't seen anything yet. I said, oh, no, here's the catalogue, what do you reckon, So he said, oh, well,
There's nothing
okay,
in here.
you have to see this, some of this might be on quota, you have to have a quota, and you have to have this and you have to have that. Anyway, he said, we've got to put an entry in to the customs. Okay, you put the entry in. I said, that's all right. Anyway, the boat came and the boat went. And I rang him up and I said, where's my gear? I said, the boat's gone. Oh, don't worry about the boat. He said, all they do is unload and put in a bond store. And he said, then eventually they get around to shipping it out to you. And I said, oh, that's good, that's all right. So anyway, I let it go for another couple of weeks, and then I said, have you seen that stuff? Haven't you got it yet? And I said, the carrier should have taken it out to you. I said, no, I haven't got it. In about 3 weeks this was, and I'm thinking, oh, God, what's happened? Oh, anyway, they found out that some bloke, Bright Spark, we had these 3 boxes, had sent them to Townsville by accident.
Any ice rinks up there, Don? Got use up there?
I said, why? He said, I've no idea, but he said, we'll get them back as soon as possible. So it took a week to go up there and a week to come back.
Oh my
anyway,
gosh.
Meanwhile at the rink, I've got these blokes, a particular mate of mine, he's a good mate, Jimmy Jones. Anyway, you're full of bullshit, Rowston.
Oh, okay, yeah. This is where it starts. Yeah.
I said, no, I'm not. I definitely got it. I said, it's the paperwork. Oh, that's all bullshit, They
thought you were stitching them up.
So this was what happened. Anyway, eventually the boxes arrived. They looked like they'd been around the world, which they have.
The boxes are all beat up, half open.
So anyway, I got the suitcase and I took it down to PA, and of course immediately I sold the lot in almost no time at all, And I thought, oh, this is all right. Anyway, I had this suitcase carrying it around down the rink. And the manager came over and said, you can't do this in this rink. You can't
Sell gear within it.
sell gear in this rink.
Were they selling gear at the moment? No,
Not really.
No.
I was selling a few skates from the Melbourne.
This is
CCMA.
the same guy giving everyone grief about the Zamboni.
But it was... Anyway, so one thing led to another, and Kennedy, I started making him an agent for me, and then when I was in Melbourne, when I went down for the next, anyway, somehow I met a guy in Melbourne called John Purcell, who was that's right, we had to play, I'll just digress a little bit. We had to play in the Australian Club Championship because we'd won the competition in Sydney in 1962, and we had to go to Melbourne and play the winner of their competition. So that was like the Australian Championship for a club. So we went down to Melbourne, and I'd met some of these blokes in the interstate team down there as well. Anyway, one of the blokes is John Purcell. He's a pretty nice sort of a bloke, executive in a chemical company. And anyway, he said, Don, I see you doing something about hockey gear. he says, I've written to Bauer and I find out, and they sent me a letter to contact you. And I said, oh, okay. Righto. Well, I said, well, maybe we can work something out for Melbourne, And he said, yeah, he said, I'd be interested in selling the gear. And so John was well known. He was, one of the better hockey players in Melbourne, defenceman. And so he became an agent in Melbourne. And then when we played the Brisbane people, there was a guy called Wise, I can't think of his first name now, but he was a nice young bloke, and he said, I'd be interested in selling your equipment too. So, I had an agent in each place straight away. So that was good. Okay, I wasn't much good to me going to rinks because rinks didn't have any shops or anything to sell equipment. And then I said to Jack Cooper, and who was getting very friendly with me, and I didn't know it until years later that he was a colonel in the Canadian Army.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's a big wig, and he's quite a personality in Toronto. He's a lovely bloke. He had 2 sons about my age, and one, about that, about those. And we were in the business as well. But I was dealing with him all the time. He seemed to think it was good fun talking to me. And anyway, so I said to him, I've got to get a pair of skates. Skates are not that flash. He said, I'll get you a pair, Don. What size are you? And I said, okay, I'll ship them out to you. And I said, oh, don't worry. I said, I'll pay you. Oh, no, I'll give them to you. I said, all right, okay. So that's nice.
Wow.
I said, I want a decent pair, all good stuff. He said, oh. I said, well, what's the story with skates? And he said, I said, I know about CCM, but what else is there? He said, oh, Bauer's the one. He said, I know Don Bauer really well. He said, I said, oh, that's good. Where is he? He's out of Kitchener. And I said, oh, where's Kitchener? And he said, that's about 2 hours from Toronto, out towards Niagara Falls. And I said, oh, okay. So he said to me, well, that's fine. I'll give him a call. Anyway, I gave him a call, and he said, I mentioned it, Don Bauer, and he said, anyway, I rang up Ed Price. I told Ed, I'll get your letter straight away and to send with to Bauer. I said, Bauer, yeah, they're good company, And I said, oh, okay, who's going to speak to Don Bauer? He's one of the brothers. He was the general manager of the company, the family business.
Of course, yeah.
And I sent the letter and sent his supporting letter with it, and also a letter from Jack Cooper as well, supporting me, and didn't hear anything for almost 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Not a word, no communications at all. I thought, oh, well, it's
There goes that.
not going to happen. And then one day, I looked in the letterbox and here's the catalogue, and I've still got it.
That is amazing.
Really?
And the catalogue came and the price list. He said, oh, we're happy to do business with you, Don. Here's the terms. Here's the range, And so that was the beginning of the Bauer system.
That's amazing. So nothing was instant. It was, you had to wait and send letters and kind of...
Yeah, nothing. No, it's a different world, and it was all done by letter. Even there was no telegrams, very brief telegrams. That's all you could send, other than a letter. You could send it, go by airmail, but still it was nothing was instant.
No.
But to cut a long story short, after I'd been trading a bit with Bauer, they sent me a letter saying, we want to see you in Canada, Don. I said, well, I can't afford to go, Canada, God, it's like if you went to Brisbane, it was a big thing. Let alone going to Canada. So I had a good Canadian friend who finished up managing PA, Phil Hall, who lived in Toronto, and he just married an Australian girl, and he was over there, and he said, "Oh, you could stay at our place, Don, in Toronto." And I said, "Oh, that's good," in one of the suburbs out there, because I went over. Oh, that's right, Bauer gave me $400, and I bought a world ticket, and that's where I went over to see them at Bauer, and of course I was lucky because Phil lived in Toronto, and he was over there with his honeymoon and all the rest of it, and I don't know what was his honeymoon that time or was another time. Anyway, his parents were lovely. They looked after me in their house, a modest sort of house, but it was nice. And then his sister married this really wealthy property developer, and she said, "I'll get him to give you the Cadillac."
Nice.
Yes.
Anyway, Phil was there.
Okay.
Phil had started driving me around Toronto, all around the place in this blooming Cadillac. And he said, "I'll drive you down to Kitchener." And he drove me down. We went to Niagara Falls and come back. It was not far from there.
Was it in the summer or the winter, Don, when you were over
It
there?
was just on the turn,
Yep.
the winter.
So cool.
Yeah. But what I couldn't get over at Niagara Falls, the fence, that's right, later. So the fence was quite low.
Mm.
Really?
And you just, like you go trip
You can
over
fall
that.
over if you want.
I couldn't get over that. Anyway, I got to Bauer and they put me up in their house, Don Bauer's house, and he had a nice house, nice quality, not a mansion, but a nice house,
Yep.
and family and so on. And factory was like one industrial area type. It was a smaller town, a bit like Newcastle, maybe smaller than Newcastle.
Right.
Anyway, the factory was, was all right. But then I went back to his place, and the next morning we went to the factory again, and it snowed overnight. It looked totally different, like it was about a foot of snow on the ground, and in this factory, and it looked like something in Ultimo or something like that in the old days, and it was like that. So then, it sort of got, he was quite happy we were doing business at that stage, and we started to distribute to ice rinks and some shops. A few, we had McSimmons in Sydney who had a chain of shop. They used to buy one model of skate. Kennedy was a big supporter. He helped, used to buy the range. But there wasn't many places to sell it. And we had mostly the ice rinks, but they wouldn't buy anything. You had to sort of give it on consignment and, all this sort of stuff. It was pretty tough going. But there wasn't many ice rinks around at that stage, so it was a pretty small business. Just reflecting a little bit back on some of the hockey, the competition at Bondi was a four-man competition, but there was some pretty good hockey there, but the rink did close. I think it was around about, I'm not sure exactly, probably 63 or 4, something like that. I'm not sure exactly. I can't remember. But interestingly enough, there was quite a bit of entrepreneurship going on with ice rinks, and they put at the Ryde swimming pool, they put an ice rink over that for one season, but it didn't work too well. And they also had another ice rink over a pool at Lidcombe as well. I remember playing hockey there, but they were very elevated, so they were a bit unusual. But anyway, getting back to the business side of things, we started dealing with Bauer, and things were going along well and distributing throughout Australia with various ways, mainly through the rinks and a few retailers and so on. So the hockey continued on and the competitions continued on, the Goodall Cup and the Brown Trophy, and then the Tange Trophy came later. And so the hockey was going along, and then Canterbury Ice Rink opened up. Originally it was a outdoor rink, and I remember playing the Canadian Navy there, and we went out to play on the rink, and the blooming skating along, you started hitting the pipes. So so it wasn't too good. We had to go off for a while until it froze over a bit better until we could play. And anyway, we played and it was all that. But Canterbury became a central part of the hockey system in Sydney. And so there's always competition at PA, and the competition at Canterbury were the main two venues up until more or less I played through till and retired from the first grade competition when I was about 40. And so my hockey playing days are over. The business continued, and in around about 70, I think it was, 1970, Bauer started selling ski boots. And in Canada, they had this brand called Monteverdi, and that was a whole new world. So they suggested to me that we might want to try some. Anyway, we bought a few out with one of the shipments and tried to sell them, and it was almost impossible to sell ski boots because it was just a proliferation of brands on the market. Unless you had the big brand, it was very hard. It was a bit like tennis rackets.
Were you a skier at that point? Like, had you been going to the snow?
No, I hadn't been skiing.
Yep.
But the kids were growing up, and sort of, so we couldn't sell wholesale the ski boots and make a profit. We could sell them for what they cost us, but we couldn't sell them to make a profit. So we thought, we had an area, we had shifted to a newer factory at this stage in Rowston, and we had a mezzanine floor at the back, and I thought, I could stick the skis up there and try and sell some, have a little ski shop. And of course, we were running the wholesale business and the chemical business still in the bottom part of the building. It was a full block. It covered a full small block of land, and had a double bay, elevated dock, so it was easy to load heavy stuff onto it and get the containers in and so on. Another aspect of the business, the ski shop. So we decided to open a ski shop, but we soon realised that a retail ski shop, just retail, nobody has completely been. We called it the Ski Factory, and we started off small and a few people. It was very awkward because we had to walk them through the factory up onto the mezzanine floor at the back, so it wasn't very good. So we had a big conference with Father and decided to put another floor in the building. So we put a complete floor right through the top building, so it gave us plenty of room up the top to have the ski shop upstairs at 21 Margaret Street, Rowsell. And that was very very good. It was a real learning curve. I wasn't a skier. I had been skiing, but I didn't know a lot about the skiing part. So I started reading up and getting teched up on the skis and so on. And the kids were growing up, and so that led us to sort of going skiing every year for about 20 years, and a couple of times a year. And so the kids had a great time. We all had a great time skiing, and we learnt to ski fairly efficiently. We were all good quality mid-range skiers. Of course, the time we spent down there was not enough to become a really good, really top-class skier. But the kids loved it, and it was great fun. And actually, the retail ski business was extremely competitive, but we did manage to get a good consistent clientele that supported us every year. But again, it was seasonal.
Yep.
And once the business, if the season was good, you did well. If the season was bad, you lost money. So it was very dependent on the quality, the ski, how the business went.
And was the ski shop, Don, was that kind of the start of opening up distribution for more brands other than Bauer and like ski brands and then also other things?
No, we were sort of at that stage we were sticking to the sort of winter sports type things.
Yep.
We had tried a bit of baseball, but that didn't work. However, there was another aspect to our business that emerged. Bauer also were manufacturers of roller skates. Now, roller skates, proper roller skates, there was quite a proliferation of roller rinks, but they were nearly all in Queensland and a few in Victoria. New South Wales had a few too, but they were smaller sort of enterprise type things. So there was a market there for roller skates. So Bauer made a fairly good quality skate, but they weren't really, it wasn't their main game. It was sort of like a secondary thing. But in it, while we were visiting Canada at some various sporting events, we come across a company called Dominion, and Dominion made really good roller skates. Anyway, we found out that they had made a high white roller skate, and there was all sorts of other variations, and so we used to make and assemble roller skates with soccer boots on them and all that sort of thing. So another was sort of a variation, but it was we could sell more roller skates than we could ice skates, as it turned out. So we were quite strong in that market, and mostly went to Queensland. But so we went along steadily selling these roller skates. I remember we got a 40-foot container of roller skates from Dominion, and I had to carry every single one of them upstairs.
To the mezzanine, Don?
Yeah. And actually, I had an employee called Oliver Richardson, who was a good mate of mine who I used to play hockey with, and he was involved in roller skating, so he helped a lot in the development of the roller skate. Now, he was very technically minded. He used to model aeroplanes and all sorts of, and he used to a motor mechanic on motorbikes. He used to sort of race motorbikes to us in a small way. But anyway, he was a great bloke. He's a good friend of mine and one of the best people I've ever known. And anyway, he was an employee of ours and mine for about 25 years.
This time,
yeah,
Don?
we're starting to. We had to get someone to do the books, and that was another. So we're gradually working along, but we're still fairly small because the markets was at small, didn't have a lot to go on.
Yep.
But then something happened. We noticed in the catalogue that the Bauer catalogue, they had a page full of skateboards.
Skateboards.
Anyway, we realised that I realised that the skateboards, there was not much interest in skateboards, or it was something that sort of existed. In fact, still got an original one at home, and they're pretty primitive sort of things. But they used to have a box on them, and sort of in America and so on. Anyways, there was not much happened, so we got some of those out to look at, just to have a look at what they were, and they looked okay. Had some nice wood tops and so on, but they were pretty straight. There was no curves on them or anything like that. They were flat boards. Anyway, I showed them around a bit, and no one was very interested. And then suddenly it was in the paper where someone had invented this urethane wheel.
Yeah.
Polyurethane wheel. And we'd actually started making had them made roller skate wheels, but they weren't polyurethane, they were a compounded rubber, but they were very good.
Yep.
But nothing was as good as a polyurethane wheel. It didn't have what is known as a rebound. These polyurethane wheels were very suitable for skateboards.
Yep. And
so suddenly there was sort of a genuine interest in skateboarding. And so by that time we were dealing with a company called the Chicago Skate Company in Chicago, and they used to have a variety of more expensive artistic and general racing roller skates. So we had some of their stuff out here. So we started to sort of try and they had apparently there was some interest in America, and they made a plate and put the roller skate mechanism on this sort of smaller plate that you could screw onto the board. Anyway, I thought, this is good. This will make a skateboard. Anyway, we tried various roller skate bits and put them on. They were okay, but this was called a Chicago on a plate, a little plate, and you screwed it on the bottom, put two of them on the board, and you had a skateboard. Anyway, I remember I bought about 600 or 800 of these to try out.
Yep.
And it was a Saturday morning, I can remember. Anyway, the shipment arrived from Chicago. That's there from Chicago itself, so it's in the middle of America. Anyway, got them out. It might have been 800 or something like that. Anyway, Saturday morning, I'm on my own. I went down to the factory, and there was cars in the street. I thought, that's what somebody must be having a birthday or something. So anyway, I opened the door and went in, and then the doorbell rang. I locked the door, and the bloke said, you've got the Chicago trucks? I said, yeah, I think so. You mean the plate with the wheels and that on, with the trucks on it, didn't have wheels on them.
Yep.
And I said, yeah, I've got them. He said, how many can you give me? And I said, what do you mean? He said, I'd like to buy all you've got. I said, but I've got 800. And he said, oh, no, well. Anyway, next thing I know, there's about 6 people. I said, so I had to take one at a time, come in.
Yep. And
by about an hour and a half later, I'd sold every one of them.
Really?
Yeah. Anyway, and so that was the beginning of the skateboard.
Amazing.
So the skateboard was we persisted with the skateboard, the roller skates, and also the other skates. So we had quite a few things going on. And then we still had the chemical business going. And then we thought, oh, well, we could sell some of these to retailers, toy shops and so on.
Yep.
So the toy shop business, so we went to the toy fair. We had a booth there.
Yep.
And anyway, we had the booth and quite a few people were interested in skateboards. So this was the start of what we call the skateboard boom. And it was all over the place, there's all these kids that, wanted to skateboard and polyurethane wheels. And then, so what we did, we got assemblies from various places and we had a bit of stuff still coming from Chicago, but it was very hard to get them because they were flat out supplying America and the rest of the world. And anyway, so we got some. When we started getting stuff from New Zealand, and then we started getting a local board, putting it on and making, so we finished up having a range of skateboards that sell to mainly toy shops.
Yep.
And gradually, within a couple of years, we were selling a lot of skateboards, but we were too expensive. There was a demand for a skateboard that was a little bit cheaper, that was good.
Yep.
So the stuff from New Zealand was good, but it was too expensive, and all the American stuff was too expensive. There was definitely a market for the top end stuff, but the main volume was in a cheaper product.
Yep.
But something that worked. So I thought to myself, I've got to get something, an assembly with wheels, polyurethane wheels, and they had the sort of flexible
Truck.
ends on them.
Oh, yeah.
On the wheels, they were sort of cushy.
Yeah,
long. They were long.
Yeah, they'd come out and they'd taper back in. Yeah.
Anyway, so I'd been to Taiwan on a previous journey but didn't find anything.
Yep.
Anyway, there was a bit of a show. I found out there was a bit of a show on there, a small show, and I went to Taipei in Taiwan, and I had been there before, but I couldn't find anything. It was just a wow of a place. You couldn't. Anyway, so I went there and I went to this show, and it was in a hotel, and just a couple of rooms in the hotel. They had a bit of a auditorium, a smaller place, and there was a few of this. But anyway, I went around and I found this little bloke in the corner, and he had the polyurethane wheels.
Yep.
He had some trucks, and he had an assembly. He had everything I wanted.
Yep.
And I thought, this is it. This is what I need. And I said, how much is it? And it was cheap. It was good quality and it was cheap.
Yep.
And didn't speak English. And there was this woman there who spoke English, and I thought, oh, she's the Trump, but she wasn't the Trump at all. It was just this little bloke.
Yep.
And he was very kind and nice and friendly and showed me the truck, and it was exactly what I wanted.
Yep.
And the price was good. So I could put that on an Australian-made board and produce a skateboard to sell to the shop, and they could sell it for $39 or something,
Yep.
And it was good quality, and it was exactly what people wanted. So we called it the Reflex skateboard.
Yep.
Which you probably might have heard of. And anyway, so here we are back at the factory. We're getting the local board. We imported this. And I got to the stage where I was importing a full container of these assemblies, 20-foot container.
Yep.
Of these assemblies, which is about as big as that there, full of assemblies.
But that's single, isn't it? That's not on a board or anything yet.
No.
They still got to be put on and folded together.
Yeah, here we are for the next 3 years with a hammer in my hand. seen a skate from England,
Yep.
and it was in a line. And I had a skate on it. I got a pair and I had a skate on it. And I thought, that's not a bad idea. Actually, that works. And this
Yep.
was like 3 or 4 years before there was any sign of inline skate. And then suddenly there was this inline skate by Rollerblade made somebody invented or discovered more in America.
Yep.
And of course it's called Rollerblade. Anyway, suddenly this rollerblade, the Taiwanese manufacturers are starting to make rollerblades,
Yeah.
inline skates. And so suddenly there's an interest in the roller skates, interested in these skates. And I got a pair, one of the first pairs out. I started skating on it and it was pretty good. It wasn't much different to skating on ice skates, except the stopping was a little different. That was all.
Yeah.
And so I skated around and found it quite well. Anyway, I would go to at this stage when the early skates are around, I would go to a show in Taiwan, and I'd talk to the people. It was various suppliers.
Yep.
And they wouldn't want to talk, they don't sort of talk to me much,
Yep.
And then I would get a pair of their skates and put them on and go for a skate. And then the jaw dropped.
So that was the end. You just showed them how the skates actually work and did crossovers.
And I used to be able to tell them, I used to put their skates on and go skating, and they all wanted me to try their skates on because they never nobody's tried their skates. They made them, but nobody's tried them.
So just making thousands of them and just that looks like the
I'd
other
tell
one.
them, what's wrong with them or what's good about them or what's so on and what wheels and all the rest of it. So I'd be tearing around the show, and everyone, oh, look at this bloke, stupid old bloke, and he can skate on those skates,
Yep.
It's amazing. And so, he and of course, having an enormous skate background
Yep.
all my life, basically, I would, could skate on anything pretty well.
Yeah.
But so they all listened to what I had to say, and all this stuff. And there was quite a lot of suppliers, different ones, and so it went, one thing led to another, and we finished up a very solid business in the inline business,
Yeah.
I'd just like to reflect back a little when I retired at 40,
Yep.
and then I had a break of a few years, and then they rang me up one day and said, first grade competition in Sydney, the Lions were playing in the final,
Yep.
and one of the blokes, the defenceman, had broken his leg.
Yep.
And they said, Don, we need you to come along and play defence.
Yep.
And I said, look, I haven't played hockey for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, no, you'll be right. Just come to a few practices. And I went to a few practices. Oh, you're right, no problem.
Yeah.
We went out and we won the competition. And I didn't score many goals while I was playing defence, and so I was quite happy, So, but anyway, then a bloke called Greenie, I can't think of his first name, from Blacktown.
Yep.
This was an interesting story because this is to do with ice skating, ice hockey. Anyway, he said, Don, can you come out and help us? He said, I've got these blokes at Blacktown. He said, I'm in terrible trouble with them. They don't listen, they don't. Anyway, I said, I don't really want to play hockey again, And,
Yep.
oh, Don, please come out. Anyway, I went out and, of course, I finished up playing hockey again.
Yep.
And this was in the second division, of course. Anyway, I'd come from a very strict system, like I was trained to be very precise and very exact of what you're doing and concentrate on your ability, your skills and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
Anyway, I went out to Blacktown, I couldn't believe it. You know, I went into the change room, the blokes come in, they throw their helmets to the wall and smashing the blooming thing. I said, what are you doing that for? It's fucking this, fucking...
Yep.
I said, what's the problem? I said, how's your hockey going? Oh, good. I said, what's your idea of hockey? He said, oh, that's easy. He said, you get the puck, you skate up the rink, you meet two people if you can, and then you shoot at the goalkeeper and smash him. I said, is that right? I said, did you score? He said, oh, no, he didn't score. I said, where are you in the competition? I think we won a game about a month ago. And I said, where are you in the competition? I think we're coming about second last. You know, I said, oh, okay. Why do you think that is? Oh, I don't know. You know, we just want to get. I said, you've got to start thinking about what you're doing. You know, anyway, we looked at all these players and they're quite good. They quite actually shoot and everything like that, but they had no idea how to play the game.
Yep.
You know, and anyway, they got me there and I started and I said, look, first thing you've got to start doing is put the stick on the ice. So if I'm a defence player, I can pass the stick to you and you're going to pick it up.
Yep.
You've got it waving around your head. I said, you're not going to pick up the passes.
Yep.
I said, it's all about passing and you just doing your job, you know.
Yep.
Oh, you know, never heard of all this stuff before, you know. And so ultimately we got together and got a pretty good team together and started to train them. I said, look, I'm playing in defence. I said, as soon as you see me get possession of the puck,
Yep.
you put your stick on the ice.
Yep.
I said, I'll pass it on to your stick.
Yep.
And he said, really? And I said, yes. Anyway, I started passing it on to their sticks and they couldn't believe they were actually getting passes on their stick. On the defence. Anyway, we went on and Greenie was, you know, very grateful for, you know, what was happening and we finished up winning the competition and...
That's amazing.
You know, so on.
I mean, it would have been hard back then because everyone's just kind of piecing it together themselves. And were people you weren't able to really watch the NHL or international competition at that point?
You know, you see a brief news reel or something, you know, at the NHL.
Yeah.
So there was, but basically it was a lot. They just basic skills, you know. They didn't understand that it was a team sport and you don't have to do everything yourself. A lot of them had the idea that you had to beat as many players as possible and shoot on the net. Yeah. Forgetting about what the actual team was doing. You know, so they didn't have the concept, but they had the skills, you know, they had sufficient skills if they were projected in the right direction. So that's where the coaching aspect of it was very important because I coached a lot of TANS junior kids. I had the junior association going, training them and showing them how to pass and shoot and all that sort of stuff and train the teams. We took 2 or 3 teams away to various tournaments and so on and so there was a big history there and all that stuff. I'd like to finally say that within the organisation of Adlon Trading Company, we had some wonderful employees over the years and many people that stayed for long periods of time and working diligently and well to make a company a success. And a few of them I'd name is my son Tim Rowston, who was in the sales area, Stephen Lumley, who was the general manager for more than 20, 30 years, Tim Curran, who our accountant was, just so many, Leon Baker, who was a general rouseabout around the place and did a lot of the paperwork as well, and all the other members of the staff, so numerous to mention. And I'd like to thank every one of those and for making the company a success and sticking to the company all those years. Thank you.